城は海の上に断崖絶壁で立っている。
The castle is built on the edge of a
テ
cliff.
ラスの上に張り出した
On one side of it, there's a terrace with a majestic windmill.
平らなところで
On the other side is a vast ocean. The sea breeze blows in and the windmill turns. The castle walls tower above it. It's an extremely beautiful
断
atmosphere.
崖の下に大きな海があって
The place feels like a famous tourist attraction.
来て風車が回る。